We'd rather die on our feet than live under the Galactic Council's boot. Gerald Mitchell marched into the Grand Chamber, his weathered face projecting unyielding defiance. Alien councillors murmured, their varied features twisted in disdain. "Ambassador Mitchell, you defy our edicts and interfere in the Zelmoth Protectorate. How do you plead?" Izar, the reptilian Komar leader, narrowed his eyes. Gerald glared back. "Guilty as charged, and I don't regret a damn thing." Gasps and shouts filled the chamber. Izar pounded his podium. "You dare admit violating galactic law? Have you no fear?" "Fear of what? Letting the Zelmoth starve like you did? Turning a deaf ear to their suffering?" Gerald shook his head. "When they begged for mercy, you condemned them over petty regulations." "The Zelmoth defied trade laws. They caused their own plight. Well, humanity heard their cries. We refuse to bow to a council that abandons entire species to famine and death." Gerald leaned forward, his voice booming. "If you think you can subjugate us like you did them, you're in for a rude awakening. Push us and we push back. Hard." "Is that a threat, Ambassador?" Izar seethed. "No, it's a fact. The Zelmoth aren't alone anymore. Humanity stands with them. You've sown the seeds of rebellion, now you'll reap the whirlwind of our resistance." The council watched, some with fear, others with outright malice, as Gerald stormed from the chamber. But he didn't care. Let them rage. Let them lash out. For the first time in history, humanity would give the galaxy's oppressed a fighting chance. The council's days of unchallenged tyranny were numbered. A new era had dawned, and mankind would lead the charge. Izar leaned back in his chair, steepling his scaled fingers. His reptilian eyes narrowed as he considered Gerald's defiant words. "The Zelmoth situation was regrettable, Ambassador Mitchell, but the Council's decision was final. You had no right to intervene in our affairs." Gerald scoffed, crossing his arms. "No right? The Zelmoth are sentient beings, Councillor, not pawns in your political games. When we learned of their plight, we did what any civilized species would do. We sent aid, food, and medicine. We used our own ships to break your blockade and deliver supplies to the starving populace." Izar's eyes widened in surprise, his forked tongue flicking out briefly. You risked war with the Council to save a species that means nothing to you?" Gerald leaned forward, planting his hands on the podium. His voice was low and intense. "Every species means something to us. That's the difference between humanity and the Council. We don't measure the worth of a species by their technology or their wealth. We see the value in all life, no matter how small or insignificant they may seem to you." Izar shook his head slowly, disbelief etched on his scaly features. "Your sentimentality will be your undoing, Mitchell. The galaxy is a harsh place. Only the strong survive." A grim smile tugged at the corner of Gerald's mouth. "Strength comes in many forms, Councillor. The strength to stand up for what's right, even in the face of overwhelming odds. The strength to forge alliances based on shared values, not just shared interests. That's the strength that humanity brings to the galactic stage." Izar regarded Gerald thoughtfully, his reptilian eyes glinting in the chamber's artificial light. "Your words are passionate, Mitchell, but they do not change the fact that humanity has violated galactic law. The Council cannot simply turn a blind eye to your transgressions. There must be consequences for your actions." Gerald nodded, his expression resolute. He stood tall, shoulders squared, meeting Izar's gaze without flinching. "We're prepared to face those consequences, Councillor. Humanity knew the risks when we chose to aid the Zelmoth. But let me ask you this. What would have happened if we had submitted to the Council's will? If we had stood by and done nothing while an entire civilization starved? The Zelmoth would have perished, their culture and history lost forever. Is that the kind of galaxy you want to live in? One where the strong prey upon the weak and the Council turns a blind eye to suffering?" Izar hesitated, his claws tapping the podium. His forked tongue flicked out, tasting the air. "The Council's role is to maintain order and stability, Ambassador Mitchell, not to interfere in the affairs of individual species. We cannot be held responsible for the fate of every civilization in the galaxy." Gerald laughed, a humorless sound that echoed through the chamber. Stability? Is that what you call the Krynar rebellion or the Vortax incursion? The Council's policies have bred resentment and unrest across the galaxy. Species are chafing under your rule, yearning for freedom and self-determination. They look to humanity as a beacon of hope, a champion of the oppressed. Izar's eyes narrowed, his scales bristling. And you think humanity can offer them that freedom? You think you can do better than the Council, with its centuries of experience and wisdom? Gerald spread his hands, his voice ringing with conviction. We're not here to impose our will on anyone, Councillor. We're not seeking to replace the Council or overthrow the established order. We're here to stand with those who share our values, to build a galaxy based on cooperation and mutual respect. The Zelmoth were just the beginning. Since we aided them, we've forged alliances with the Krellian Confederation, the Novolon Ascendancy, and a dozen other species who believe in the rights of all sentient beings. Together, we're working towards a future where no civilization is left to suffer in silence, where the strong protect the weak, and where the Council serves the needs of all, not just the privileged few. Izar steepled his fingers, his reptilian eyes narrowing as he considered Gerald's words. You've been busy, Mitchell, building a coalition to challenge the Council's authority. Gerald shook his head, his expression earnest. We're not challenging your authority, Councillor. We're offering an alternative, a vision of a galaxy united by shared principles, not by force or coercion. Izar leaned forward, his voice lowering conspiratorially. And what of the Thaxian Consortium? They've been your most vocal critics, accusing humanity of meddling in the affairs of other species. Gerald met Izar's gaze evenly, unflinching. The Thaxians are a proud people, with a long history of independence. They see our alliances as a threat to their sovereignty. He paused, choosing his next words carefully. But we've reached out to them, offered to open a dialogue. We believe that even the deepest divides can be bridged through understanding and compromise. Izar nodded slowly, his clawed fingers tapping a rhythmic pattern on the podium. Your words are persuasive, Mitchell, but the Council will not simply stand aside and let you reshape the galaxy according to your ideals. A wry smile tugged at the corner of Gerald's mouth. We don't expect you to. But we're not alone in this. Our allies stand with us, ready to defend our vision of a better future. He gestured expansively, his voice ringing with conviction. And more species join our cause every day, drawn by the promise of a galaxy where every voice is heard and every life is valued. A heavy sigh escaped Izar's lips as his shoulders slumped, the weight of Gerald's words settling upon him. You paint a compelling picture, Mitchell. Your vision is seductive, I'll grant you that. But the reality is far more complex than you make it out to be. The Council may have its flaws, its imperfections, but it has maintained a fragile peace in this galaxy for centuries. Your actions, however well-intentioned they may be, risk plunging us all into the abyss of chaos and conflict. Gerald's expression hardened, his jaw clenching as he met Izar's gaze unflinchingly. Peace built on the foundation of oppression is no peace at all, Councillor. It's a gilded cage, a pretty lie that masks the ugly truth beneath. The species of this galaxy, every last one of them, deserve the right to choose their own paths, to forge their own destinies, free from the Council's suffocating grip. Rising from his seat, Izar's voice was tinged with a deep sadness, a resignation that seemed to seep into his very bones. And what of the consequences of your crusade, Mitchell? The lives that will inevitably be lost, the worlds that will burn in the fires of war. Are you prepared to bear that burden, to carry the weight of those sacrifices on your conscience? Gerald didn't hesitate, his voice unwavering as he replied, We are, Councillor, because the alternative to stand idly by and watch as the Council's tyranny crushes the spirit of every free species in this galaxy is unthinkable. We've seen the cost of inaction, the price paid in the suffering of the Zelmoth and countless others. We will not let it happen again, not while we still draw breath. Izar nodded slowly, his expression grim, the lines etched deep into his scaly features. Then there is nothing more to be said, Ambassador. The Council will not back down, will not relinquish its hold on power, and neither, it seems, will you. The galaxy stands on the brink of war, a war that no one can truly win. Rising to his feet, Gerald's voice rang out across the chamber, echoing off the walls with a fierce determination. "We don't seek war, Councillor. It's not our goal, not our desire. But if it comes, if the Council forces our hand, we will fight, not for conquest or glory, but for the right of every species to live free from the Council's yoke, to determine their own futures. And if we fall, if humanity is crushed beneath the weight of the Council's might, others will rise to take our place, inspired by our example, carrying the torch of freedom forward." Thizar watched in silence as Gerald turned and strode from the chamber, his head held high, his steps unwavering. The councillor slumped back in his seat, his eyes closing as a wave of resignation washed over him. The die was cast, the paths chosen. The galaxy would never be the same, no matter the outcome of the coming storm. You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.